Welcome to the Human Conversation podcast with Jules White, the real dragon slayer, author and entrepreneur sales coach. Tune in weekly for human conversation about business and sales. Enjoy business expert interviews, educational episodes, and virtual cuppas with entrepreneur business owners. So grab yourself a cuppa and enjoy. Here is your host, Jules White.
So welcome everybody to the Human Conversation, and I have another guest from across the water. So I have a fabulous guy called Dominic de Souza with me. I am told reliably that I've said that correctly, and he is based in Virginia. So welcome, Dominic, to my podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
It's so nice to see you. We have again connected via LinkedIn. So I've got a few of my guests lately that are coming on who I've met on LinkedIn. And it's so nice when you finally get to see them in this kind of 4D human way across video. It's such a great way to connect. So I'm really pleased to finally see your face and your smile and know that you're real. So that's very, very cool. So I want obviously the listeners to find out a bit more about you first. So just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Oh, thank you. First of all, allow me to just be a total whatever and say that I loved your book, and I'm a bit starstruck to be talking with an author right now. So you're a TEDx speaker too, right?
I am, yeah. Dominic, we're waiting for the video. It's driving me nuts because it's taking so long to come out. But yeah, as soon as I've got it, I'll make sure I share it. So thank you so much. I'm glad you like my book too.
No, I sure did. So if your listeners haven't read it, they should, because it really helped me through a little hurdle I was trying to get over when it does come to sales. Anyhow, so your question was about my background, how I got into...
Yeah. Who are you and what do you do? Yeah. Okay. Where did you come from?
Well, I think I'm fortunate to have one of those kind of crazy globetrotting origins that is kind of indispensable from the whole thing. So I'll start with my dad's experience. You know, he grew up in a tiny little, my understanding anyway, tiny little village in Brazil. And then he met my mom. She was an American from California. They married, moved to New Zealand, and he ran a motivational, speaking education business out of his basement. And we then moved to Australia, and then to France, had a stopover in Fiji, and then ultimately ended up in the States. So a lot of traveling, a lot of exposure to new cultures, new ideas, new places. So for me, I have it's probably sort of grown out of all that, is a constant love and hunger to discover things, right? To learn about new people, learn about just learning. I absolutely love that kind of thing. So then growing up, because we moved a bunch, we ended up just somehow being kind of isolated from actually being able to connect with communities and so on. And I think I ended up turning into a bookworm. My other siblings went and did all kinds of other things, but I became an absolute book hoarder and loved the storytelling and loving art and design and making my own superheroes and crafting comics and so on. So by the time I was in high school, I was convinced that's it. I'm going to be a novelist for the rest of my life. This is where my passion is. I love telling stories. This is the bee's knees. And then my mom was like, no, you need to get a job, be a plumber, something to pay the bills. And it's like, no, Mom, that's not how life is. I'm 18. I know what's up. And my dad needed help with the business. He just couldn't do it anymore. It had grown and so on. He was trying to expand, in a way, start from scratch in a new continent. And he needed someone to help with, the database and emailing and, handling stock and client support and so on, and just training other volunteers and so on. And so I started from, just learning how to do all of that kind of thing. So we did this for about 7 years, and I ended up learning how to do web design and graphic design and being the entire sort of back of house guy so that he could go up and do the talks and meet with the people and so on. And ended up being incredibly fortunate to land a couple of other job opportunities that continued drilling into graphic design and web design and so on. And so to cut to the chase, about 2 years ago, I joined a small team, a startup that does web design and marketing out of Front Royal, Virginia. Amazing team. They're all college grads. I'm actually the oldest out of all of them. They started in college, and I've been fortunate to join them. And in working with all these small businesses, they're home contractors, maybe law offices, and so on, I want to be doing more with the potential, the storytelling potential within these brands. These are people who are not only in business just because, yes, I have a water bill and a family, but they believe something and
Yeah.
they've done things that are interesting, and they, through their work, are connecting with other people and who have their lives and their dreams that are also interesting. And so I was trying to solve, how do you solve this issue of social credibility, social proof? How do you solve your content marketing generation program? How do you get stuff like user generated content? How do you actually connect with people? How do you do user research to make sure that you're validating your brand? All of that stuff that the big guys are paying millions to do, right?
Yeah.
The small business can do within 5 minutes over coffee.
Mm.
And I was trying to figure out how do you figure that out? So that was my goal for 2018, was to just start blogging every week. And I did this on LinkedIn to just get my thoughts on paper. How could this be tackled? And that start with your, clarifying your brand, and then clarify your vision, and then identify your storytelling potentials, stuff like that. The goal is to turn it into a book. But this has now become something that I'm just fascinated in, and because it ties back in everything that makes me just, jumping out of bed in the morning, is there's now discovery and interest, because there's now stories and storytelling that's now possible for these small businesses. So this is the project that I'm now working on with this year, is to finalize this book, call it Tribe Storytelling, because it's a focus on how to help small businesses solve their credibility, solve their content production issues, and then spellbind their audience by not just creating content that's talking about them and their brand, but creating a platform like through their website to be telling the stories of the tribe, of the people who are in love with their brand and engaging with them.
This is fantastic stuff, isn't it? Isn't it just wonderful? I love it so much. I think it's so great listening to your stories, the fact that it's a very organic story. Your own story is really organic, the way you've kind of developed everything you've learned, your love of learning, and actually how creative you are. And now using all of that creativity in what you're doing today, that's just wonderful, isn't it? I'm really excited about everything you're doing. It's so cool. I think there's a very, very important thing about this human conversation that we're going to have, and that is, you just touched on it for me. It's not just your own story and your own storytelling. It's the storytelling of how that tribe then fall in love with your brand, which is, I think, practically the words you just used.
Yeah.
And how amazing is that? Because now that's telling another audience how your audience love you. This is awesome, isn't it?
That's one of the reasons why I loved your book. That's the best kind of selling. That line from Seth Godin where he's like, marketing is not something you do at people. It's something you do with people. And it took me like a month to try to understand, because he's coming from a worldview where that makes sense. And I needed to try to get my head into that worldview. And that's where working, consciously with your tribe from the get-go, there's a framework in place for how you make this work, and you stop trying to go viral. You start trying to go tribal. And I like the point that you made about using your brand instead of a platform to broadcast at people, which is what we're used to after a century of huge businesses just doing that to us, and we not having any ability to do anything about it. We just had to take it on the chin and just buy whatever soap they showed us. But now we have social, now we have live video, now everybody has a smartphone and HD video, and everybody is a critic in a second for every restaurant and so on. So it is as it always was. You have to deliver a fantastic experience, a fantastic service. That's, you can't put lipstick on a pig. Marketing doesn't save a bad product. But this is one of the reasons why I'm shifting from just brand storytelling to tribe storytelling. There's a company that I've been following this whole last year called brandstorytelling.tv. And it was actually one of their videos that gave me this hook, this insight into how this could work. But I think the challenge that is, and I may just be splitting hairs, but the possible challenge inherent with brand storytelling is that it becomes another toolkit, a tool in your kit. You're still thinking about your brand and the stories that your brand can tell about the things that you're doing. Now, I'm sure you're doing tons of incredible stuff. That's not dissing that. And if you really understand a brand, you recognize that a brand it has two parts. It has you, and then it has all of your audience. But most people, whenever they think of a brand, they just assume it's just what I'm projecting about myself. It's my promise of an experience around a service and what makes me distinct in my, my market. So that is all true, but it's only half the picture.
Yeah.
And that's why for people trying to get into brand storytelling, they're like, well, I just need to be telling more stories about me, why I'm cool, what I'm up to, my origin, and so on. So I think if we flip that around, first, yes, have a distinct and an interesting origin story that's on your about page, right? But then half of your blog content should be a day in the life of my client, and where it's not about you and your business, and it is all about them and what they're up to. You're inviting them up into the spotlight with you, right? And I'm just thinking, project this 10 years down the line, right? What kind of brand loyalty are you going to create within your audience, where you're not just a commodity, where you're from day one, every relationship, you're inviting them, I'd love to showcase you on my website, or you have a particularly unique story that just marries with the visions and the archetype that my brand stands for. Come on up here and join me, because it's not about me, it's about us. I may have an idea, and I might have been just the first to the table with the world should be this way. But you also believe it too. That's why you hired my services. You didn't just buy my services. You're buying into me, into what I stand for. So let's celebrate that together. That's the idea.
I love it. And I think it's really interesting what you said about the big brands, and traditionally, over the last 100 years, probably plus, where we've almost just been told these are the brands that we need to follow, and this is what we need to buy because it's the best. And it has very much been around the name of the brand and the way their marketing budget, presumably, as well. Because they've got the biggest budget, they're going to be in front of us more.
Oh, yeah.
I loved how you used the word spellbound. So actually, to be spellbound by a product, it feels much more authentic. It feels much more like I'm actually, I've made a choice to connect with that product, my own choice. I don't know where this has come from. This is just what I'm like, Dominic. My human conversation just starts to flow.
It's great. That spellbind was actually the original name for my book. The whole of 2018 is what I wanted to call it before I realized it needed a shift. But that's what you're creating is magic, right? You're creating worlds. There's I penned a fun little article about, we try so hard to be in control of our brand. But once you realize that you don't own the tribe of people who are engaging with you, they're completely free to say and do whatever they want. So you need to recognize then, when you're creating a brand and a set of experiences, you're creating a world like Middle-earth, like a Narnia, like a Westworld, whatever, and you're inviting people to come on in and experience it. And then hopefully they're enjoying it so much that they're going back out and telling other people. But what they do, how they experience your brand, whether they, bounce around from your Instagram to your Facebook to your email, whatever, each of these different touch points are experiences within this world that you're creating. So that's why data doesn't drive enchantment, right? Data measures enchantment, and your story is about creating that.
Yeah, that's so cool. What a great conversation today. I love this, because it's just, my whole book, you've read my book, kind of where that came from now, because you've read it. And I guess as well, everyone will read my book in a different way. That's an interesting point. Maybe I'm going off on a tangent here, but different things will be very poignant to different people. And I believe it's the same with brands. Different people will connect with your brand in different ways, because we're all so unique. Somebody will take something from me in a different way to another person because they need it more at that particular time. And so all of these elements for me mean that the only way to go out as my brand is as absolutely true me, not pretending to be anything else, just telling them why I think about this particular thing. Then they'll take what they want from that. And when I wrote my book, it was very much this outpouring of 30 plus years of being in corporate and being trained how to sell. It was almost like rebellious.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to think, why was I ever really successful at sales? That's kind of was my starting point.
The whole empathy rebellion. I know
Yeah.
that's what I loved about your book, and I burned through it in like 2 days. I loved you had some examples earlier on where you were working sales calls, and you shared how the calls where you just didn't talk or weren't pushing the sale and just actually engaged the person and made a friend.
Yeah.
Not only were they the most rewarding for everybody involved, but that's where you build your loyalty. And those are the ones that work. And that, I think that's one of the reasons why I love the uh, not just having a clear vision or a clear story, a clear idea, but then turning around and being empathetic about it, not making it just about you. And that's why your book is so great. It's helping you reorient your focus on not just what you do, but how you're helping and the people that you're doing it with, and actually thinking about them and being empathetic about them. And I think that story, and this is why DreamWorks is, this blockbuster, and Netflix and so on, is the human thing, the human person. We have a craving for storytelling, for sharing stories. I think it was, don't quote me on this, but Netflix accounts for, like, what is it, 40% of evening time internet data. The constant hunger either to get away from a situation or to enter into somebody else's experience or something. It's all of the research and so on about how our neurons fire and how we respond and so on. But it's storytelling is a chance to participate in somebody else's life, someone else's experience. It's kind of like an out-of-body experience where you can learn and experience things that you could never go and do. And for some reason, whoever could answer why, it's catnip for humans. And that's why I think anybody can be or is a good storyteller.
I agree with that.
Yeah, they might, say, oh, no, I can't, I couldn't hold a tune. But it's like, no, anybody can say, you know what happened in the market last week? I was just bumping into this guy and he had this bag of cronuts and you wouldn't believe what happened, right? Boom. Well, what? Something as simple as that. You find a way to help your audience start sharing those stories with you. And all of a sudden, you're now creating a community of people around your service, so that when your visitors come to visit your site, they're your ambassadors. It's like free advertising. They're marketing with you. You're getting to see these individual people. And if you're talking about hyper local businesses like a roofer or something, you're probably going to bump into that person or see them, and now they're maybe a mini celebrity, right?
Yeah, now they're real. It's a real person. But you're talking about Netflix. It's really interesting because I've got a 14-year-old son. My regular listeners will know about Sam. And Sam will sit in the evenings and he'll watch YouTube. That's quite huge for him. Mm-hmm. He learns so much from YouTube. And again, although it's not the Netflix type of stories that you've just mentioned, it's still entering into this world of other people. It's still looking at, what do they know that I don't know? And stories, for me, there's so many different ways to do storytelling. It's not just that kind of hero's journey stuff, which is great. There's a whole host of different ways that stories hit us, and they hit us on that emotional level, which is why we connect so well to them. I mean, I love this conversation because I think it's actually really, really important for businesses now to start thinking about actually, how are you storytelling and how are you relating that with your tribe? This is what I love about it. How is that then going to take you forward to that next level of growth in your business or wherever you want to go and what you want to do? It's great, isn't it?
Absolutely. So I've got a question for you. Like we were chatting earlier. So my question is sales a set of rules that any business can just deploy, or does it come in or is there some organic way that it is influenced by your distinct brand position, your value, where you come from?
I think it's a really interesting question. It's a question I need to think about because there's a couple of things that are coming straight away for me. Mm-hmm. Because sales, as you know, because you've read my book, is about your why. That's kind of where it has to start. And that why is around your values, what you really believe in, what you're passionate about, and what you love doing. That's kind of the basis, I believe, of a business. It's just the way I see it. Some people may think that's romantic, but I believe that's true for a successful business. That then has to connect with the values and the beliefs and solving the problem for your ideal client. So those two things have to connect. And for me, it doesn't matter what your brand is and what you sell and what your market is and how far you're selling, whether it's global, local, whatever it is. I still truly believe, and I've taken a long time to strip this all back, that it has to start there. It's very simply that connection between you understanding why you do what you do, the beliefs and purposes, not just because you want to make money and retire and buy a yacht. This is that belief and purpose of why you want to go out and do what you want to do, connecting that with the solution you provide. That's sales, and that's often the bit of sales people miss, because they go straight in for, here's what I'm selling, want to buy it. And they've missed all of that stuff which connects you. And for me, that's where storytelling sits so beautifully, because that's one of the beginnings of that connection. And as you quite rightly say, storytelling goes right through live it, love it, sell it, through every section. Did you notice that? It's not just one part of it. It starts at the beginning, your personal story. It's in the middle, your why, the connection. And it's ongoing when you're selling to talk about then your tribe storytelling on your behalf. I don't know if that really answered your question, but my whole thing around sales is, for me, it doesn't change and it doesn't have to change. It's always about this important foundational stuff.
Exactly. There's one, yeah, I love it. There's one company that just come to mind about how, I don't remember his name, but he's one of those guys who's about like being radically honest and radically helpful and whatever. And he's an amazing at whatever he does. But if people are looking for something a little more, he'll refer them directly to his competitors. He'll tell them, just go work with them. You'll be happier there or something. And I remember reading that thinking that who does that? Who actively refers people to their competition because they know that they're going to get a better experience or whatever. I've tried that a couple of times when you ask your internet company, like, oh, you don't serve my area. Well, is there anybody you recommend? It's like, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. Corporate won't let me say anything. If you're making a name for yourself as your brand, being a radically empathetic and helpful and honest and genuine person, then when you get on that call, it's, yes, you need to make business. Yes, you need to make a sale, but ultimately it comes down to what does the client need? And then are you the best person to help them? Yeah.
What does your customer need? And actually the other things that come from that are really wonderful, because they will remember you. So you're memorable. They will talk about you. So now you're doing your tribe storytelling. Boom, there it is. And even though they may not need you or you can't serve them, that next person they know does need you and you can serve them. And all of a sudden, you've now created another connection that you would never have created if you hadn't have done that genuine, empathetic, giving stuff, that we can all give and we can all do. I naturally want to work that way. That's my integrity. That's how I want to go out into the world. So,
and that's what I love about this whole aspect of this discussion, which actually ties back to what we were just talking about, the whole 100 years of big brands broadcasting at us. They had the mega bucks to spamvertise everywhere across all channels and whatever, right? And in the last 10, 15 years, we have been now given, or we've created for ourselves, because we're sick of just the status quo, we've created for ourselves platforms that have allowed people from anywhere at any time to network with each other, connect with each other, talk to each other, and so on. So now brands can't just pay to make bad press go away. If people aren't liking what their brands are saying, like my wife was telling me this one girl, what is her name? Organic Bunny or something? She went into Chipotle, couldn't get the ingredients, and ended up tweeting or creating some kind of a little, media firestorm about lack of transparency, and Chipotle overhauled its menu. It's like the big brands they can't hide anymore. They can't get away from it. Now reviews are public, for better, or for worse. So you can't hide anymore, and you can't pay to make stuff go away. And I think for small businesses, that's a strength, because
Massive.
small businesses can move fast, can be flexible. You can meet with like 10 people and then reposition your brand. You can identify quickly where your supply chain issues are, or where your experience gaps are, whatever. Small businesses have an edge on them of not just speed, but personal experience. Big brands are trying right now to personalize. It's not personal, though, the way a
No.
small business can be.
Yeah, it's almost like they've come at it because they've got to. So, oh gosh, we've got to do something different now. And you are seeing them, aren't you, in their advertising and their language. You are seeing this switch. Really interesting thing I read the other day, actually, is that it's not necessarily off topic, because I think it's connected to this. Talking about companies now should be starting their own podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, now this is interesting, because they really are then thinking about this personal brand side of their brand. Because if they're having something like a regular podcast go out, they've got this huge opportunity to start showing who they really are, as opposed to, like you say, telling us what the brand does and that we should buy it, So I thought that's really interesting, isn't it?
It is. It's Facebook just came out with a new podcast called, what is it, like 2.5, I don't remember what it's called anymore, but as soon as I saw that, I thought, first of all, it is absolutely cool that Facebook is creating a podcast, because it's now just not Facebook creating content. It's now, whatever his name is, Mark something.
Yeah, Mark.
Now I can start connecting with, I can start following and getting to know Mark. My favorite podcast is Everyone Hates Marketers by Louis Grenier. And I don't know much about Hotjar apart from using their tool. I don't know the people there. I've been told that the founder is an amazing person, but I know Mark. I'm sorry, Louis from the podcast. He's a person that I can connect with and listen to, and I can't remember who it was who was writing this, but they were saying that when you hire people, you're hiring, half the time anyway, you're hiring professionals unless you're training them. You're hiring these amazing people. Kind of like what Steve Jobs says, we hire these incredible people and then we tell them what to do, as opposed to them telling us what to do.
Yeah.
So you've got this legion of incredible thinkers and whatever, and then they are gated. They are not, being given access to communicate to the people. And the reason why you're hiring them is because they're bringing points of view, or they want to explore points of view. So instead of creating these sort of corporate help banks, which are your blogs, what if these people are now given a chance to blog and speak and communicate and connect? You're humanizing your brand, which is, for me, that's a huge thing today. This is the era of social, right?
Yes.
And coming across as human, as engaged, connected, concerned, interested, and interesting, right?
Yeah.
You can lean into that. That's what creates tribes. But that's what creates interest, and that's why people follow Instagram accounts, or why they're loyal to Facebook groups or fan pages, because I get you, and maybe you get me, and we're all getting this thing that's interesting to us. So where do I sign up?
I'm a lot older than you, so I come from that time when we didn't have computers. I say this a lot on my podcast. I'm sure I feel like I repeat this a lot, but it's interesting because we couldn't actually research anything. We couldn't get that knowledge that we now can get with the internet. But now what's happened is it's all going even further down the line, whereby what we're talking about today, in that this kind of like, we're connecting now as humans so much better because we've got the internet, which is weird, because I've always thought, well, actually in my day, because we didn't have text and we didn't have phones, we had to speak to each other, and we could call each other, and we would meet more and we would have more conversations. But actually I feel like it's coming round in a big circle. I don't know what you think. You're younger than me, but I feel like we're now starting to have conversations again, and this is really cool, and actually we know more, and we've got more opinion and opportunity.
Oh, for sure. I think that's one of the incredible advantages to social networking as it's growing. So as a sort of to throw in there, I'm about 31, I am 31, but in growing up in New Zealand and Australia, my parents were, my dad loved new tech and so on, but new tech back then was those first Apple Macs, with So our lives in that sense were very kind of, well, it was 80s, it was 90s. So very pre-internet and all of that. So I understand that.
Mm.
Um, much more of that whole community focus and the phone, and you want to do something, it's like it's hard. You have to go to, well, you go to the library, of course, but you might be dealing with outdated information, and
Yeah.
it's hard to find people who directly, uh, are looking for you. So I mean, that's why we created social media. That's why social net was created, was because we now have a world of people just disparate, separated everywhere, and we want to find people who think like us.
I think there's so much we've talked about, but it's like that, and I keep listening. I'm listening intently and thinking, I need to pick up on that. I want to tell him about this, and I want to tell him about that, because we've really talked about some fascinating stuff that I'm really interested in. I think that it would be really great just to kind of think about this framework you talked about. Going back to your business and how you're carrying this forward in your business.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us more about that framework, or is that a little bit kind of work in motion? Or
So like I said, I'm like maybe a couple of months shy of finishing the book, and if anybody's interested, I'm blogging everything on LinkedIn to get my thoughts out there. And then when the book is done, the idea is to try to give it all away, because I just want to help people. But the methodology for the framework is actually something I learned when I was working for a private school out of Virginia. It was a homeschooling program, and they had a monthly magazine that went out to all of the families. But right in the center was always the featured family section, and that was an interview with a curated list of families that reflected the brand and so on, because there's all kinds of people and you can't tell every story, but they picked the ones that from a variety of kinds of families and backgrounds and experiences and so on, and told their story, where they came from, what they valued, what they were trying to accomplish, and then how this program had helped them get there, and then what they liked about it most. And now here's the future that's now possible to them, or whatever, or here's the amazing things that came from it. So it's not only incredible social proof, brand validation, but it was the most incredible human touch point with the entire community, and everybody started getting to know these, I guess what would become celebrity, sort of families. So anyway, people loved that. And then I was fortunate to be able to head up a student magazine and sort of refresh it, resurface it, turn it into a quarterly magazine and get a website going, and then being in touch with the students and running competitions and quizzes and stuff like that. And I loved that. I loved working with them. And one of the things that then became very popular was student profiles and then alumni profiles, right? And asking them to come back and share their stories. How was the program successful for you? But more importantly, who are you? What are you up to? What are you interested in? Where are you going? And how is the program helping you? Because you're obviously sticking with it.
Mm.
So again, validation, social proof, and so on. And it was as simple as a contact form on a page, asking for a photo, and then just sharing that. And the kids were like, they refreshed the website every day, and we didn't have content every day, to see if there was a new person that they could meet. And they started forming friendships. And then when they would have the graduation, they would all come to this graduation at the high school stadium, whatever. They would be knowing each other. They would be connected with each other. There's this now community that's happening before they're even graduating. And they're actually getting to know these people, more than just a profile description, actual stories and comments and so on. So that's my inspiration for where I'm going with all of this, is how can a business do this, given that you're busy, obviously.
Yeah.
And our attitude when it comes to marketing is we think marketing is advertising. And I have ad spend, so I'm just going to put it towards micro-targeting or whatever on Facebook and Yelp and Google and whatever. But marketing is not just advertising. Advertising supports your marketing, but marketing is every single thing that you do, every phone call that you take, every job that you go out on, every person that you meet and smile. It's not just your business cards, but it's your communication. It's the emails that you send, all of that, because marketing is the communication of your value, your product, which means every experience a person has of you is either confirming or your value, or causing them to reject it. So basically we need to stop going after trying to find 1 million people and filling your funnel with 1 million new leads and so on. But if you're focusing on the whole 1,000 true fans approach, right, of the 1,000 people who are absolutely gaga about you, and are willing to follow you and buy from you over and over and over again. So if you're a small business, that is ultimately all you really need.
Yeah.
You don't need the churn. Small businesses can't handle things like breakage and churn and bad reviews. It needs to be amazing and loyalty building and not a commodity. But the businesses that create that human connection, that human experience, that's ultimately what it's all about, is the human connection.
Mm.
So the framework then to make this all happen, this is how it's building in my mind, and I'm working with my team to see if we can start implementing this now. The way I see it is simple. You're looking for 12 stories. If you're a small business just starting out, or you've had 5 years under your belt, what I'm thinking is all you need is 12 stories. It worked for Christ. He found 12 influencers from a variety of places on the spectrum, and he worked with them to help them get the message out to 72 other disciples. I think Confucius did exactly the same thing. Like, what was it, 40 years before Christ? He was doing the same thing. He had like core group of, I think it was like 12 or 14, followers, and they helped him communicate out to that additional. So if you think of it like rings of influence, right?
Yeah.
You can't expect to be directly engaging with and influencing and making deep friendships with everybody. But if you bring in 12 people to be your ambassadors, 12 people who are absolutely in love with what you do, you take those and you put them on your website. Now you may end up getting like 15, 20 stories, whatever, but you want to cycle them out till you get the 12 that best reflect your brand, best communicate who you are. And most likely they're probably going to be people who are just like you, because with most small businesses, your brand is you. It's your heart, your passion, how you see the world, how you like to get stuff done. So you want to find the stories that reflect that, because those stories are now going to help you go find other people who think just like that. So that 12 helps you find your 72.
Yeah.
They might be like 80% engaged, but that 80% is like, they're coming on the warm referrals of your 12. You win over that 72, you're now able to reach that 1,000.
Yeah, I love it. And it makes sense, doesn't it? It makes complete sense. And then surely then you're actually doing business with the right people. You haven't got to try and do something different. You haven't got to try and pretend you're doing, or you can be somebody that you're not, just to satisfy them. Oh,
yeah, exactly.
Fabulous. I'm sort of breathing going, oh,
no,
great.
but it's so, for me, it's just fun and fascinating, because for me, everybody loves Netflix, right? We love YouTube. We love following our Instagram influencers and so on. So what if your brand, and I'll credit Andrew Davis with this idea, who wrote the book Brandscaping, but he has this, paraphrasing, what if you created a Netflix for your brand? What if your blog was not just content and freebies and tips and whatever, but what if, and I think Gary Vaynerchuk has been pushing this for a while. He says, you're not just a roofing company, you are a media company that does roofing, right? And that shift, because social is built around stories, it's not around selling. It's called social media because it's where you go to be social, for a social hour, happy hour, time around the water cooler, not running into everything, trying to find business. I know that's what we need, and I deeply get that. We've got mortgage and medical bills, but nobody else cares about that. But they will care, or they are interested if you can give them a story that maybe they can then share that makes them look interesting, or gives them a chance to be excited about something you're interested in, right?
Yeah. I think somewhere in here as well for me is the whole value subject. But that's probably another podcast for us to talk about, because I believe that the connection and the tribe will be such because they see the value that you give. And I'm very hot on value, because value is also about what are our values, what's the value we believe we bring, and does your ultimate ideal client see that same value,
Right.
And that's why people buy, is because we see value in something, isn't it? Or why we follow, or why we have a fan, why we're fans of, because we see value in it.
We're now getting to a point where it's like, the honeymoon is over. We've had our fling with how awesome all of this is and what is possible. All right, now we want to get back to what is actually human, what is actually real. there are so many people out there who sell authenticity, who pretend to be genuine.
Yeah.
And all it takes is one comment, after a few drinks at a party, and their brand disappears, or, you doing it wrong on social media because they're putting on an act.
Yeah.
Their whole account goes up in flames, right?
Yeah, very much. And I think, there's been these people now who say, oh, I can't stand the word authenticity, it's just overused. And, oh, I can't stand the word value, it's overused. Well, you'll only be able to stand those words if you see what they truly mean. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to stop using them because they trigger you, because I truly mean them when I use them, and that's the thing. Let's not lose some of these words because now they've been overused and they trigger people. No, I wrote a blog about this actually because I got frustrated because I said, I actually want to use the word authentic because for me it means something.
We now have like Gary Vaynerchuk says, our BS filter is like way up here now. And we can do something about it. So when you do get a brand that doesn't shy away from not just saying they're authentic, not just saying, we're the roofing company you can trust, but actually it doesn't say that, but demonstrates that, and lives that, you're never going to go away because we don't want commodities. And that's the other thing is people don't like change. We don't want change. I was just talking with Peter Beckenham the other day. He's a fantastic coach who lives out in Thailand. He's an amazing guy, Australian. And he reminded me just to calm down. Yes, you might be the sort of rebel who likes to find new things and discover stuff, but everybody else doesn't like change. Or they adopt slowly. So that being the case, you find a roofing guy or a home services or a small business guy that you like and who demonstrates trust and is shown to be building a community of people who support and love him. Well, you're probably going to lock in forever. There's no reason now to want to go to somewhere else. The only reason why we shop around is because we don't trust what we're seeing. Yeah,
exactly that. Oh my goodness, Dominic, I could talk to you all day. What are you like? It's been so cool. So I'm going to make sure everybody's got your links because I always put those in the description. So if you can send me those, that will be great. But tell people where you'd like to connect with them. What's your best place?
We can just connect on LinkedIn. So if you search for Dominic de Souza, actually, if you search for tribe storytelling, I haven't done this, but I'm assuming I'm the only person with that phrase. I'll show up. I do have a website, dominicdesouza.com. It's just a simple little placeholder about me. But LinkedIn is where I like to spend a lot of my time getting to know people, having like 15-minute meet and greets to talk to them and humanize the networking, process.
Yeah. And I would absolutely recommend that you do contact Dominic because he's an amazingly interesting guy, actually. I've really loved this conversation. It's been wonderful. So look, if you've been listening to our conversation, I think it's been really fascinating. We certainly covered a lot of aspects. You'll be able to hear it very soon on all of my channels. That's SoundCloud, Spotify and iTunes. Please subscribe and like because we're having amazing conversations here on The Human Conversation. And I'm also now putting it on YouTube because I have my YouTube channel that I am growing this year. So you better see us having this conversation, which is even better human connection there. Thank you, Dominic, for joining me. It's been wonderful chatting to you too. Thanks very much for listening. Ta-da for now.
You've just been listening to the Human Conversation podcast with Jules White. To find out more about the other work that Jules does, please visit her website, www.liveitloveitsellit.co.uk. And if you enjoyed the podcast, then please do leave a rating and review on the platform you use to enjoy her show. Thanks for listening and see you next time.